Hey everybody, how's it going? This week I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about hierarchies inside the trans community. As you may or may not know, we live in a system, at least in the United States, where straight, white, Christian, able-bodied, cis men are at the top of the heap. This is called the patriarchy, and for I should think some obvious reasons, a lot of trans people aren't really in favor of this. Generally speaking, trans people rank fairly low down on the patriarchal hierarchy system. And what would be great is if trans people and gender nonconforming people and non-binary individuals and everybody in that massive umbrella all were like, yes, and we're like a big happy family and we're all equal together and that's great. Unfortunately, hierarchies are kind of pervasive. So, at the top of the trans hierarchy, from what I've noticed, are trans people who are post-op. They've had top surgery, bottom surgery, hormones, they've legally changed their name, legally changed their gender, they identify as straight, so they're interested in people of a different gender, and they're possibly going to get married and have children, and they're basically going to go stealth. They're going to live the rest of their lives passing as a cis person and presenting as a cis person and leaving their trans past behind them and not talking about that at all. So they're at the top, and that's because they're essentially buying into the patriarchal system of, like, being cis and being straight. Now, this is not to say that if you are a trans person who identifies as straight and would like to live stealth the rest of your life, if that's what you want, that's what makes you happy, then you should totally pursue that. I'm not saying that you're like those people are bad people. I'm just saying they tend to be at the top of the heap. Then people who meet all those criteria but have not had surgery yet are like sort of the step below. Then people who are queer but are doing all the surgery and like are planning and have done it or whatever, then they're like the step below that, queer trans people, because at that point you're not straight anymore, so you're sort of creeping down the patriarchy scale a little bit, so you're also creeping down the trans scale a little bit. Then from what I've seen are trans people who are still fairly binary, so like they identify as men or as women, but they don't plan on getting all of the surgeries. Maybe they don't want bottom surgery, maybe they don't want top surgery, maybe they can't afford it, maybe it's not important to them. They're not going to do the whole medical transition process, which is also fine. But then they're slightly down the scale because their body isn't conforming to what's expected of them. This is all, sort of like for fairly binary trans people who also pass well, which is a phrase that I'm sort of skeptical about. Passing, I can't remember if we've been over this. Maybe I should watch her old videos or something. Passing is when, like, whatever gender you present at, people read you as that gender. So, after this comes people who don't pass well. So the better you pass at whatever your preferred gender is, the higher up on the hierarchy you're gonna be. And the less well you pass is the gender you're presenting at, then the lower you are on the scale. And this is sad, because people are awesome and perfect no matter what their body looks like, and they shouldn't have to conform to whatever sort of expectations of femininity or masculinity they're expected to meet to be able to pass well. Then, from what I've noticed, at the very bottom of the hierarchy are people who are non-binary trans individuals. So people who identify as bigender or agender or as genderqueer or gender fluid or gender neutral or whatever. People who are outside of the realm of trans man or trans woman are, like, at the very bottom. Which is definitely, like, it's just part of the patriarchal system, which is very binary. There's, like, there are men and there are women, and men are at the top and women are at the bottom, and, like, there's no room for people who are outside of that binary space. And unfortunately, in a lot of trans spaces, there's not a lot of room for them either. Which is terrible. This hierarchy that I've sort of laid out, it's by no means precise, it's just sort of like some general observations that I've made, some of my friends have made, and it also doesn't take into account anything other than gender, identity and expression, and also sexual orientation. Of course, like, there's no way we can ignore, like, race and class and any of that, but again, once you start adding race into it, then it starts to follow the patriarchy, where people of color are further down in the hierarchy. This video is mostly just to sort of inform you and make you aware of what privileges you may have even as a trans person among other trans people, or non-binary people. And so I hope that you're just a little bit more aware of that now, and that if you notice yourself sort of like looking down on folks, you sort of think about why you're doing that and how everyone follows a different path, and that's totally cool. I try and, you know, do my bit to work out, to sort of like fight against that hierarchy within the trans system, because we are all working towards a common cause, which is recognition of our gender identities in a society that doesn't really want to recognize us for who we are. So, love each other. See you later.